As the Chicago Bears are set to begin rookie minicamp here this weekend, we are previewing their 8-man rookie class. And today we're looking at an offensive tackle out of Boston College, Ozzy Trapilo. And joining us today is Mitchell Wolfe, staff writer from Eagle Insider on 247 Sports. Mitchell, first off, man, thank you so much for joining us and taking your time today.
No problem. I'm happy to be on. Always excited to talk about BC football players.
Yeah, I mean, let's get right into it. With Ozzy, he was a third player picked. He was a second round pick, an offensive tackle, a need for the Bears. What are some things we should know about Ozzy at his time at Boston College?
So Ozzy started 3 years for Boston College, 1 year at left tackle, 2 years at right tackle. The 2 years of right tackle were most recent. And his first year at left tackle was a bit rough. He had some injuries. The offensive line as a whole was pretty bad just because of injuries. But you saw him get better as the season progressed. The next year, BC brings back their previous offensive line coach, who has been the year before with the Dolphins. So he comes back, and the whole offensive line plays better. A lot of guys come back from injury; they get some good transfers in. Ozzy moves over to the right side. He plays a lot better. Doesn't give up any sacks. Next year, he's back, redshirt senior, 5th year. He gives up 2 sacks, but if you look at both of them, they're both off of kind of miscommunications, off pretty exotic stunts from the defense, and he's kind of in a position where he's got to block 2 guys and he has to pick one, and the other guy, gets a sack. But he has no penalties as a senior, no holding penalties, no false starts, no anything. So that's pretty impressive. And he wins all ACC first team offensive tackle. And with Ozzy going back to his, going back to his way background, his dad played at Boston College, and if you have seen the Doug Flutie Hail Mary from 1984 or whenever, there's the picture where he's getting held up by an offensive lineman, and that's Ozzy Trapilo's dad, Steve.
Oh, okay.
So he was the offensive tackle there. And actually, Ryan Poles' dad played with Ozzy Trapilo at Boston College back in the 80s. So they have that relationship going all the way back. Ryan Poles obviously plays offensive tackle for Boston College in the 2000s, left tackle for Matt Ryan. So there's the relationship there. Actually, this is a fun story. So I went to the BC Missouri game this past year, and as I'm walking to the stadium, I see 2 guys walking in front of me, and I'm kind of following them, trying to figure out where we go in. And I'm looking at them, I'm kind of behind them. I'm like, okay, that's definitely Ryan Poles.
Yeah.
So I see him in somebody else I don't know. I couldn't recognize him, but they were at the BC Missouri game. So, and I think they draft Luther Burden, they draft Ozzy Trapilo. Like, oh, they probably saw something they liked in that game, which was kind of funny. But anyways, going back to Ozzy's background. So he's from Boston. His dad unfortunately passed away due to a heart attack on family vacation in the, I want to say, early 2000s. Ozzy goes to Boston College High School, which is a feeder program for BC. Pretty highly rated recruit out of Massachusetts, sticks around at BC, doesn't play his first year. His next year, he plays a little bit. They play him at guard later in the year, but he doesn't get much playing time. So he's played a lot of football. He's played both tackle positions, one probably better than the other, but you could see a world where he is okay at left tackle because he is so technically proficient with his footwork, with his hand usage, with how well he sees the game. When you watch him on film, you almost feel like they're running the ball, especially in 2024. They're running the ball to and through him. Like they want to design plays where he is basically the point of the spear, if you will,
Okay.
because they know that he knows where he needs to be, he knows where to go, how to get there. And you'll see like a lot of times he'll be assigned to block guys in succession. Like, okay, you block this guy initially, then climb to the next level and hit this guy. You kick out this way and then go the other way. So he's a very smart player. Like I said, no penalties this past year, so he really knows what he's doing. Obviously, a big guy, 6'8", 316, decently long arms. You probably want them to be longer for that height. He's obviously not going to be super flexible. You're 6'8", you're going to be a little tight some places.
Yeah.
So you'll see him get beat in areas where guys who are just way more athletic than him can beat him a little bit. So that's a bit of a concern. But because he's so smart and technically proficient, he can mitigate some of those athletic limitations.
And, looking back at him as a recruit, top 25 offensive tackle by pretty much every major recruiting site, you noted, Boston product. How important was it for Boston College to essentially, get a legacy recruit like him? And over his time, I think you mentioned it, but, it seemed like he developed every year and got better and better.
Yeah, definitely so. And like the one thing that I really noticed when I was watching his film year after year is that when he started playing, he would carry his hands very low and wide. So I'll do this so it's on video, but down near more his hips.
Okay.
And While you want them to be lower, if they're very far outside, it takes longer for you to then come up and strike your opponent. And guys would get into his chest because of it. As you watched him play more and more, you saw him bring them in tighter so then he could have more power and it would take less time so he could engage more quickly and control guys that way. And because of that, then he used his length better to control guys, by controlling their chest. And he's not when he would had his hands low and outside. Sometimes he would kind of just clap the outside of the shoulder pads,
Okay.
and you can't really do anything with that, and that will lead to holding penalties as well, especially against NFL competition. So that's one area of extreme development that he has really progressed in.
Yeah, you mentioned I think it was no holding penalties and just playing very clean and very smart. Um, for him, I guess, my question would be on that. Was it more, I guess, is it more technique or is it more smart, mental for him to, not pick up those those penalties? Because I mean, that's pretty darn impressive, honestly. Or is it
Yeah.
maybe a combination of both?
Yeah, I think pre-snap definitely, because even the year before, um, in 2023, he had 4 penalties, 3 accepted, 1 either offsetting or declined,
Okay.
and I'm trying to remember. I don't think there might have been one that was a pre-snap penalty, so that's never really a problem for him. So I think that's smart, and I think the technique. Again, when I think back to some of the holding penalties from 2023, there's one I can think of where he is kind of just he's out of position, but so he's getting he has to like reach out his hands and is kind of
Uh,
holding on too long, and he's like overextended. But the next year, he's doing better with keeping his feet moving, not letting his hands get outside. And when you watch him, sometimes you think, okay, maybe I want to see him finish these blocks with more authority and hold on to guys longer. But then you think, okay, maybe he's being coached to, hey, if they start getting way outside of you, let go. It's fine. We'll let it find another play. And there are other plays on tape where he will finish guys into the ground. So yeah, I think there's some coaching there where it's like, hey, don't if they get outside of you, like let them go. Don't get the penalties. And it's good to see that he can internalize that and it
yeah.
shows up on tape.
Looking at his career, through Boston College, was there a time or were you guys surprised he was a second round pick? Was that always kind of his draft stock? Maybe for someone covering the team, did you kind of see that the draft stock rise as the year went on? And, were you surprised it was 56 overall, which is, it's a starter spot. It's a spot you're going to get drafted where you're expected to come in and produce right away.
Yeah, so I follow the draft pretty closely, just kind of in my free time. So, kind of combining my two interests there and tracking Ozzy. When I looked at the offensive tackle class, I could kind of see I could see that there was a tier of guys that were going to be first round guys, pretty much no matter
Yeah.
what. Your Armand Membu's, your Will Campbell's, your well, actually, let's just say those two. And then you had guys like Kelvin Banks, Josh Simmons, who had some question marks. Simmons more so because there's an injury, there's some
Yep.
off the field concerns. So it's like, and we saw that happen with some guys where that knocks them down. So he ends up going at the very end of the first round. So it doesn't really matter. And then after that, I would say there's a pretty steep drop off to the guys in the next tier. That's where you have Ozzy, maybe Ariante or Suri. And then after that, there's another big drop. So looking at that, I thought somebody is probably going to take Ozzy a little earlier than we expect because they're like, okay, this is like the last tackle who
Yeah.
we can draft, if we needed to put him out there week 1, excuse me, we're going to feel fine with that.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of these other guys, okay, we need a year and change to like develop them. Whereas Ozzy, it's like, okay, it may be a little rough to start, but we can put him out there and he's going to know what to do. He's going to be fine. So look, the problem with, or not really the problem, but the question with Ozzy is what is his ceiling? Because he is a 5th-year player. He is pretty much already as developed as he can be in terms of his technique. He's very smart already. Like he's seen a lot of football. He's played in pro style offenses. So maybe his ceiling isn't that high where it's like, okay, he's not going to be a Penei Sewell, a Trent Williams, what have you. But the comp that I kept seeing, and one of them, the person I saw it most from was Brandon Thorne, who is a great offensive line, defensive line writer, has on Substack. He compared him to Rob Havenstein, who's the right
Oh, yeah.
tackle for the Rams and has been their right tackle for like a decade now. And
Yep.
you never really hear about him, but he's been there forever and he's pretty good. And you're like, and that's kind of what you want from some offensive linemen, where it's like you never really want to hear from them
Yeah.
because that means they're doing bad. So,
Yep.
and other ones like Taylor Decker, Jake Matthews, like that kind of type, where they're not winning all these Pro Bowls, but they've started all these games, they've been solid, and nobody can really complain about it. So the late second round was maybe that was about where I saw him
Okay.
based on the mock drafts I was saying. I was like, that it seems like he might go a little later, but for the most part, when we've tracking BC's draft picks for the last few years, they've usually gone a little earlier than we expect. Ezaraku this year was an exception, but I think so that was kind of surprising. But we usually see them go like maybe like 10 to 16 picks a little earlier than we expect. So he was about when that happened, I was like, okay, this is about the right range for him.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, and you looking at your scouting report. I think it was Lance Zierlein on NFL.com. There was a quote that from an AFC director of scouting, and it was that he needs to add another 10 or so pounds of mass. And you look at him, and he's 6'8", 316 pounds. Did you see that in college where he needs to get a little stronger? Would you agree with that, or do you think he's kind of just where he's at?
I think you could definitely add strength. I don't know if it will manifest in actually adding 10 to 15 pounds, like maybe 5 to 10. But
Yeah,
I could definitely see him getting to a point where he does get a little stronger, where he can control opponents better, finish blocks better just with his physical strength. But with a guy that long, sometimes it's kind of hard to translate that strength into dominating blocks because the football adage is low man wins, and when you're 6'8", it's hard to be the low man against most people you're playing, regardless of what level of
yeah.
football you're in. So yeah, I mean, I think that if he can get with the right offensive line coach, I'm not sure who's the Bears' new offensive line coach, Ben Johnson.
It's Dan Rochar.
Okay, I don't know much about him, but if maybe like if he's the guy who can kind of get him to you know learn to play in a way that mitigates that height, which is more so a disadvantage than anything. Unfortunately, if he can figure out a way to kind of mitigate that as an issue, then that would be really impressive. And I think that's kind of more what he has to work with, work on figuring out how to get around as opposed to just adding pure strength.
Yeah. A couple more questions for you, and we'll let you go. And again, I appreciate your time. But would you see it's going to be a better fit at left tackle, right tackle? Where do you kind of see his NFL career heading? And the Bears do have Darnell Wright on the right side. They've talked about potentially moving him, so there are options. But do you think he's a better fit on one side or the other? Or do you think he can, if he's not starting, maybe be a swing tackle?
Excuse me. That's honestly one of my questions. Kind of was a question of mine for you, is because I know that Darnell Wright has played well on the right side.
Yeah,
I believe that he's played that position for 1 year in college. He's played left tackle in college for a
yeah,
year, same as Ozzy. And I think they both were definitely better on the right side in college. So I think it's helpful that he has experience in both. I think that if you could feel comfortable starting him at either position if a guy goes down or you do want to move right back to the left side. It's weird to say. So I don't see necessarily any flaws that make it a non-starter for him to be on either side. I don't see a gaping issue where he cannot play on this side. I think if you play him on the left, you're probably a little worried about teams putting their best most explosive, most athletic edge rushers against him from a wide 9 alignment where they can get around the edge. But that might be just kind of a weekly matchup thing. Like if the Bears playing the Cowboys and he's got to play Micah Parsons,
yeah,
it might be a bit of a tough road. But it's a tough road for everybody. So,
yeah.
there's ways you can mitigate that with tight ends and running backs chipping. So again, like I don't think there's anything that's a massive flaw. I think just because even still, I would say right tackle is still just a little bit easier because you're not facing as many dominant edge rushers. So you probably want him on the right side, but I imagine they'll probably try both of them at left. And if one is more comfortable than the other, say, okay, we're going to go with whoever's most comfortable on the left, and then the other guy will play on the right. So that's something I'm going to be interested in following this year because again, Ozzy hasn't played on the left side since 2022, and it was a decently difficult, but he's progressed so much as a player that I'd be interested to see how he does at that, especially against NFL competition.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on rookie mini camp and OTAs as they go on here. And the Bears have a big decision to make with that because, you don't really want to be shuffling your entire offensive line all the time, but they did get better on the interior, so that helps. My last question, if a Bears fan were to ask you, which game should I watch of Ozzy? What tape stands out the most of him? Is there anything you remember, a specific game, specific play, anything like that over his career?
I think you could watch the Florida State game from this
Okay.
past year. Obviously, Florida State was pretty bad, but they still have some pretty talented players on the roster, and he was uh, fantastic in that game. BC ran the ball a ton, but you could see in the pass rush snaps just how good he is. He had 0 pressures allowed that game. Looking down the schedule, the North Carolina game this year is interesting because they've got some interesting edge rushers. Kyman Rucker, who was really productive in years past, but he had some injuries, so he missed some time. So Florida State, North Carolina from this past year. Virginia Tech would also be interesting because they also have Antoine Powell Ryland, who uh, got drafted by the Eagles in later rounds, and he's like a speed rusher, so he can kind of
Okay.
give you something to look at there. Going back to 2023, I would say look at Florida State again because you're going to see him play against Jared Verse.
Oh
You're going to
yeah.
see him play against Patrick Payton, who transferred to LSU this year. He's a really good player. So yeah, those would be the games I would say you can focus on. And 2024, I would say, is probably just the better year to look at because you are going to see a more normal offense in most games. Because in 2020, which is weird to say, but in 2023, they had kind of a very more collegey, gimmicky offense
Ah,
that doesn't translate as well. But in 2024, it was much more uh, standard passing and uh, modern run concept. So I think that 2024 is generally the better tape to look at.
awesome. Thank you so much, Mitchell. Where can everyone follow you, read your work? Anything else you want to plug?
Sure, you can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE, on Twitter. My work is all over at Eagle Insider on 247 Sports. I just published a 2-part piece that is a manifesto, putting it lightly, because I looked at every single one of BC's blitzes and simulated pressures from the 2024
Oh,
season
wow.
as trying to project forward what they're going to do next year. So that piece is paywalled, but if you are a 247 VIP subscriber, you can read that. And it's a lot of clips, but it was a pretty fun thing to work on. So that's the one thing I would say you can check out.
Awesome. Thanks again, man. I
And
appreciate
I
it.
will say my Ozzy Trapilo scouting report is free on the site, so you can also
Perfect.
find it there. So if you want to read more of my in-depth thoughts and check out some highlights I collected and some stats on him, so you can read all that there.
Yeah, I'll link that on our message board too. Thank you so much.
All right, no problem. Thank you.